I don't want to set the world on fire.
Hey everyone, this is Violet Irwin. Welcome to another installment of Art and Politics. Wow. Today, what I'm going to do first is talk about one of my favorite books of all time, actually, and a book that has had a big impact on how I think about the world, which is called The Fourth Turning. And in addition to talking about The Fourth Turning, I'm going to talk to you about Jordan Peterson and his ideas, and how incorporating his ideas can help us get through this fourth turning unscathed. As I said, it's an art and politics video. Instead of coloring a coloring book like I did in the previous one, I'm actually going to paint something for you guys, so I can show you that I'm actually an artiste and not just some chick with a coloring book. So today, I'm going to paint Jordan Peterson in portrait form, mostly because I'm talking about his ideas today, but also because I think he deserves a portrait. Anyway, I hope you all enjoy. See you on the other side.
Welcome to another time-lapse, everyone. As I mentioned, today I want to talk about a book by William Strauss and Neil Howe called The Fourth Turning, and how the wisdom of this book relates to Jordan Peterson's ideas. If you haven't read The Fourth Turning, I highly recommend that you pick up a copy and read it for yourself. It's thought-provoking, brilliant, and eye-opening, and regardless of how valiantly I attempt the task here, I will never be able to do the ideas of the book justice in a short video like this. But I will try to summarize the pertinent aspects of the book to the best of my ability now, because I think these ideas are highly relevant to our time and are indeed comforting once one understands the implications of said ideas. The first concept to understand from The Fourth Turning is that much like the weather goes through seasons throughout the year, so does human history. It posits that human history is cyclical in this way, not linear. I'm sure many of you have speculated with friends and family about the fact that the world seems to go crazy every 80 years or so. Why is that? Think back on American history. In the 1770s, 1780s, there was the Revolutionary War. In the 1850s and 1860s, we had the Civil War. In the 1930s and 1940s, we suffered through the Great Depression and were plunged into World War II. What explains such recurring times of chaos every 80 years? Strauss and Howe theorize that the human lifetime, being approximately 80 years, is the length of the historical year within which there are 4 moons, or seasons, of history. Strauss and Howe refer to the first season, spring, as the high, which is a time marked by what they describe as, quote, an upbeat era of strengthening institutions, and that, quote, all such eras mark the construction of a new social order. It is a time when, quote, the promised land has been delivered, and a time to, quote, reconstruct and savor victory or recover from defeat. The most recent high, or spring, in U.S. history was primarily during the 1950s, where the nation celebrated the end of the Great Depression and World War II. The economy began to boom, in some ways, and a new social order was established, for better or for worse, as a result of the New Deal. It was also a time marked by peace and booming procreation, hence the baby boomer generation. The second season is summer, which Strauss and Howe identify as the awakening. This is a time marked by passion, spiritual upheaval, and where, quote, the civic order comes under attack for a new values regime. This is an easy era to identify in recent American history, as the consciousness revolution of the 60s and 70s was marked by spiritual exploration, albeit with some psychedelic drugs in the mix, sexual exploration, and challenging social norms such as segregation and the coddling of women on college campuses. It was a time of new ideas, of new values, and it was exploratory to its core. As we all know, though, summer doesn't last forever, and after summer comes fall. Strauss and Howe identify the fall season as the unraveling, and based on the name, you can likely guess why this season bears such a title. During the unraveling, the value exploration that occurred during the awakening gives way to an increase in individualism and a decay of civic order and institutions. The most recent unraveling occurred in the 80s and 90s, where even the fashion indicated an unraveling of the civic order. I joke about the crazy neon of the 90s and the wild hair and leather fashion of the 80s, but these were true indicators of the times. Think about this era for a minute. This was the era when our presidential elections became more and more of a popularity contest. We began to lose trust in our communities and neighborhoods as stories of child kidnappings flooded cable news. Even channels like MTV went from playing music videos nonstop to airing almost exclusively shows such as 16 and Pregnant, cribs, or punked. Even the Christ-like figure of Superman was not safe during this era, as he changed from a goody two-shoes and bright red tighty-whities into a dark, troubled, and brooding hero. Now, the fourth season, winter, is the most chaotic, but it is also the most relevant for our time, as we are currently living through a winter of history. Strauss and Howe refer to the winter season as the crisis. The crisis is characterized by a time of crumbling institutions and of chaos. Strauss and Howe describe the winter as, quote, a decisive era of civic upheaval, when the values regime propels the replacement of the old civic order with a new one. It's often a time of war, financial crises, revolutions, or the rewriting of borders in society. It is a time that throws the culture into chaos, and wherein new cultural norms come into being. The most recent example of a historical winter was the combination of the Great Depression and World War II. But it is more relevant to acknowledge, and I'm sure anyone tuning into this video can see that, we are living through a historical winter as we speak. Our institutions, the media, Hollywood, the federal government, the universities, all of them are in total chaos, whether it be from scandal, financial troubles, or through mob mentality, with a sprinkling of violent protests up in there. These institutions that keep the fabric of society and culture together seem to be ripping at the seams. Strauss and Howe refer to each of these seasons as turnings, and each turning lasts approximately 20 to 25 years. When they published their book back in 1998, they made predictions about the current era in which we live, hence the title, The Fourth Turning. Without going into much detail here, please know that Strauss and Howe predict the chaotic status of our current era with such accuracy that to call the book a prophecy 20 years ahead of its time would be more than justified. Now, there's a lot more content and detail in the actual book, including descriptions of the generations, how each generation is unique, and how they interact with each other. It also explains how each generation can be identified with an archetypal figure, and that the mood of each turning is determined based on the age of each generation and how the archetypes of these generations are interacting with each other based on their relative ages. But I will save that discussion for later videos. For now, suffice to say that our current historical mood is winter, and that such a time is characterized by chaos throughout society and a reorganizing of civic institutions. In recent interviews, Howe has theorized that the current fourth turning started with the financial crisis of 2008, and that we will be in this turning through the late 2020s. That means that we're only about halfway through this fourth turning. I know, right? Can you believe it? Jordan Peterson, who I'm depicting in portrait form here, has risen to his fame partially because he refused to commit to use made-up gender pronouns, but also, and actually far more so, for his lectures where he speaks of individual responsibility and the divinity and value of each individual. Jordan Peterson has often identified our current historical moment as one of chaos, and he is absolutely right. I'm not sure whether or not Jordan Peterson has read The Fourth Turning, but he certainly identifies some of its themes. While one can make many jokes about Jordan Peterson, his lobsters, his Kermit-esque voice, and his calls to, quote, clean your room, understanding his message is vital to make sure that America and the Western world at large come out of this fourth turning better than we went in, instead of in disaster and ruin, as could also happen. Take, for example, Jordan Peterson's discussion of dragons in mythology. An individual should face the dragons of life willingly and with courage, because after all, the dragons have the gold, and glory comes to those who can slay such a foe with bravery. So too with the fourth turning. If we embrace the chaos of the fourth turning, the crisis season of history, willingly and with bravery, we can come out of the other side with all the gold and glory that comes from cleaning house and ridding our civic institutions of corruption and waste. Indeed, although World War II was horrific and resulted in the deaths of far too many individuals around the globe, it was necessary to rid the Western world of the greatest tyranny of the time. To get the high of the 1950s with its fertility boom, poodle skirts, and upbeat music, we had to rid the world of certain evils during the crisis of World War II. But don't forget, and this is something of which Jordan Peterson reminds us often, that dragons can also fucking kill you. And a fourth turning is capable of killing a society. Societies have crumbled during such eras throughout history. Plus, even if a fourth turning doesn't kill a society or culture outright, it could still leave the society badly scarred and burned, especially if the newly established regime is greatly flawed. The best example of this is the New Deal after the Great Depression. While the victory of World War II could be seen as gold recovered from the dragon's cave in that fourth turning, the New Deal was certainly a lasting scar from the battle, which has had, and to this day continues to have, devastating consequences on our economy and our nation's poor. We may have defeated the Nazis, but we planted the seed of the great leviathan that is now our economic regulatory system. The same system that currently crushes our small business owners with innumerable regulations, crippling taxes, and a lawsuit minefield of potential employment and discrimination law violations. But I digress, because I could easily rant about the ignorance and pitfalls of New Deal policies for days. My point is that fourth turnings are both times of great opportunity and times of great risk. And given that we are currently in the depths of a fourth turning, about halfway through with another 5 years before its climax, how should we approach such a tenuous era? My answer is by embracing individual responsibility and utilizing the power of the individual. Embracing individual responsibility is critical because historical winters are marked by a tendency of growing authoritarianism and chaos. A tree with deep roots can withstand even the most powerful of storms, but one with weak roots will blow away, ripped from the earth. It is the same with each individual, because without taking accountability for your beliefs, your actions, and how you justify your beliefs and actions, you will easily be blown away by the latest moral panic, witch hunt, or political religion of the day. You could easily fall for the ethos of a current hip authoritarian gang, as did the individuals in Hitler and Mussolini's brown and black shirts, respectively. We see this happening with the millennial generation today, as we speak, as those who are particularly lacking in individual meaning and identity flock to organizations like Antifa, an almost exclusively white and unapologetically communist gang that is quite literally the black shirts of our time. Individuals who take personal responsibility for their actions and beliefs don't conduct their advocacy in masks. It's the same thing with the KKK. Cowardly collectivists who don't respect the individual and who will not take individual responsibility for their actions. Embracing the power of the individual is also critical during fourth turnings, because it is the actions of individuals in times of chaos that pave history's path. Remember, if you will, some of the flashpoints of our current fourth turning. Some of these flashpoints are positive, some negative, and this is certainly not an exhaustive list, but all are the results of individuals whose actions altered the direction of history. Edward Snowden revealed the Orwellian spying of the NSA to the American people with the help of Julian Assange publishing information on WikiLeaks, thereby causing widespread discussion of privacy in the digital age. Through pure political magic and lies, Barack Obama convinced the American people, for the most part, to embrace the travesty of Obamacare, which has sent our healthcare system into complete disarray. Steve Jobs, through the invention of the iPhone, changed the way the entire world communicates and simultaneously created immense new challenges for personal privacy and liberty. In Paris, two brothers, Saeed and Sharif Kouachi, murdered Charlie Hebdo cartoonists for depicting Muhammad in print, thereby injecting fear into political discourse and chilling speech critical of Islam across the globe. Bruce Jenner became Caitlyn Jenner and was immediately awarded Woman of the Year. This sparked demands to call the former male athlete, quote, stunning and brave, and national arguments over transgenderism, bathrooms, and the use of insane pronouns like Z and Zer. In the most insane election cycle ever, Donald Trump was elected president, flipping the tables in terms of presidential elections and PC culture, and sending leftists into a psychological tailspin of hysteria and hypocrisy, the likes of which I have never seen. Milo Yiannopoulos attempted to give a speech at UC Berkeley, and the campus was literally set ablaze by Antifa, finally revealing to the American people how radical and potentially violent the, quote, tolerant, quote, loving, leftist, quote, anti-fascists could be. Actresses Rose McGowan and Ashley Judd revealed that Harvey Weinstein is a rapist and indeed an ultra-sexual predator, spawning the hashtag #MeToo movement, which created an army of screeching harpies in such a short amount of time. James Damore wrote a memo at Google, effectively restating psychological literature and merely positing that men and women might have somewhat different temperaments. He was fired from Google, causing national scandal and revealing to the world that even all-powerful Google is vulnerable to dangerous groupthink. A crazy white supremacist, one of like 30 in the entire United States, rammed a Dodge Charger into a counter-protesting crowd in Charlottesville, Virginia, killing one and injuring others. This immediately caused the left to decry a new outbreak of white supremacy in the United States. Social media companies, and even other tech companies like PayPal, came together and universally banned Alex Jones from their platforms, which has now inspired Congress to look into cracking down on social media and their censorship of conservatives. Most recently, a California professor, Dr. Christina Blasey Ford, made an unsubstantiated and uncorroborated allegation of a 35-year-old sexual assault against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, igniting national debate over whether the presumption of innocence still exists in this country, or if it is woke to just believe any woman's claim without any evidence at all. Now, like I said, this is not an exhaustive list of all the flashpoints during our fourth turning, as that is likely infinite, and I'm sure I missed some of the many important moments. But each illustrates how the actions of a single individual, or two, can change the entire national or even international conversation. They also illustrate how one person can single-handedly change the course of a nation's future. It is absolutely critical that individuals act in the pursuit of good and truth in such times, because to ensure that we come out of this fourth turning better than when we started, we need more individuals pushing the society toward heaven than toward hell. We have more than enough insane, ideologically possessed individuals in this country who are trying to buy us a first-class ticket to dystopia. And if we aren't careful, that dystopia will quickly manifest and become the new regime for our entire next seculum. That's the 80-year historical cycle. Indeed, we need as many Edward Snowdens, Jordan Petersons, James Damores, and Milos that we can find. We need individuals to face the dragons of the far left and the far right with courage and bravery, and to slay these dragons with the truth. We as individuals cannot fear the truth, but must instead embrace and run toward the truth with as much gusto as we can muster. It is only through courageous individuals speaking the truth that we can have the best high and the best first turning that America has ever seen, and certainly better than what we had in the 1950s. It is also the only way to ensure that the next civic order in our culture is one that benefits the most individuals in our society as possible. Ultimately, embracing individual responsibility and the power that each individual has to impact history, or the individual's divinity, as I would call it, is what Jordan Peterson prescribes for our current era, and I believe that his ideas are the only way to navigate through this fourth turning unscathed. His ideas may help save the West from dying at the hands of the dragon that is the fourth turning, and that's why he gets a portrait painted in his honor today.
So what do you guys think? Am I crazy? What do you think about the fourth turning? Have any of you read it? I'd be curious to see. Please comment below and tell me what you think about my ideas of Jordan Peterson's individualism and embracing that in order to get through this time of chaos in our culture. And if you liked this video, please like and subscribe below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.
I just want to start a flame in your heart.